Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so we'll get started. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your summer to join us today for one of the sessions that will count towards your day 2 for Oklahoma Summit. And I want to thank Daniel Bird and Christina Graff for being with us. They're going to do the presenting today, and I'm sure they're going to have time for questions and answers as we get towards the end of the session. Again, use your chat feature. And go ahead, Daniel. It's nice to have you. Thank you.
Well, it's great to be with you. I'm sad that we're not all together at Francis Tuttle doing this, but hopefully as we go through the presentation today, obviously you've got the chat feature. I am okay if in the middle of this we cover something, and I'll ask some questions as well if you are brave enough to go off mute and answer. They're not tricky questions. But really what I want to focus today is kind of that discussion around digital skills for a digitally transforming world. What's happening in the world as it relates to digital skills and digital transformation, digital literacy, all these things that we hear about. I think that's really kind of our focus today, is to help you kind of look at things through maybe a different lens. But to start, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are as a company. I know some of you that have joined us today know about ISAGRAD, but ISAGRAD's an internationally certification company. So our product line is called Tosa, and we were founded in 2010 in Paris, France, to meet the needs of industry and education there. And we've since opened offices here in the United States, out on the West Coast in Washington State, and we've got an office in Canada. And between the 3 offices, we service 58 different countries throughout the world, whether it's in education or in corporate learning and development and recruitment. We work with over 7,000 organizations, and we have 1,500 testing centers throughout the world as well. And I think more importantly, as we look at our current situation with the way school ended last year and where we're looking at this year and what it's going to look like, we've been doing remote proctored certifications for over 5 years. So we've had the learning opportunity happen early on for us in how to best deliver a remote proctored certification and do it in a way that still ensured the sanctity of a certification, but limited the demands on a test administrator from an institution standpoint. But our product, like I said, is Tosa, which stands for Test on Software Application. And it's designed to assess and certify key digital software, right? Microsoft Office, the Adobe Creative Suite, as well as digital literacy, with a focus on proficiency versus a traditional pass-fail outcome. As we look at kind of 5 main things, one, TOSA's certifications are approved on the state or on the BMIT list. But from a ease of use, we really have tried to design it so that the experience is very interactive for the test taker, so that they're having to use different skills in answering questions, but also build it using an adaptive question model, because the best way to see what somebody knows is to adapt the test to where they are and continue to challenge that to make sure that when it's done, we know what they know and what they can do. Our certifications are recognized in 12 countries, and we're on 3 state lists here in the US. And the certifications that students or others earn are valid for 3 years. And from a technology standpoint, it's all about providing an accessible solution that is 100% browser-based. A lot of times we talk about things being cloud-based, but anything in the internet is in the cloud. But for us, it's 100% browser-based. So what's nice is if I'm a student and all I have access to is a Chromebook, I can still participate. I don't have to have Microsoft Word or Adobe Photoshop on my Chromebook to do the assessments that I would need to do, because we'll load those applications right in the browser. And we make it accessible 24/7, so that no matter when somebody who is administering tests or somebody who wants to look at data, they can look at it anywhere they want. The nice thing is, from an administrative standpoint, you can do all that even on a tablet to do that. But for your students, their ability to take their assessments when it's best for them, or even certifications with remote proctoring, anytime that's best for them. And the platform is designed to handle a high number of people taking tests every day. So on average, we have over 2,200 people taking tests every day. And we run some events for high-end hiring firms that are looking to hire developers. We do some coding type competitions to find the best developers for these companies. And generally in those, we have over 1,000 people just doing that, part of that hiring process at the exact same time. But Tosa was really designed around one core element. It's all about improving higher education and helping students become more career ready, which when you think about it, that's why you do what you do in your Be My courses, is it's trying to connect these students to the why behind what you're teaching so that they're ready for what's next. But enough about us, right? Let's just kind of pose 4 questions. If I were to ask you to tell me what digital transformation is, what might that be to you? Now, if anybody wants to be brave, we'll let you go, but usually we find nobody wants to be that brave, especially early on. So we'll seek to answer that very quickly. Think about what are digital skills, but more importantly, what are the digital skills that industry is asking for? And then how do you help your students connect that? So from a digital transformation standpoint, really it's the integration of technology across a business. So, right, it's your customer experience, it's how a business is going to operate, and then really what that's going to look like going forward for a business. And so as I always do this, I think about 2 places that I used to go to, one more frequent than the other. I used to go to a bank, right? I would, many years ago, I'd get a paycheck, I'd go to the bank, I'd deposit it, I'd probably add a debit card, I might withdraw some cash. Well, direct deposit happened, but now through technology, if I ever get a check, which is extremely rare, it's more on our business side, if we get a check, I can use my smartphone, I can take a picture of that check front and back, and it's sufficient enough for the bank to use that and to take care of that transaction and place money in my account and debit it from whoever has written that check to me. And I really can't tell you, I can tell you, it was 18 months ago, I went into a bank, and it was because we just wanted to go meet with our business banker on a couple things. But that whole industry's changed because we're able to do so many things online. Even for a teller, everything they're doing now is computer-based, more so than some of the other things they would do. The other place is at my doctor's office. My last doctor's appointment was earlier this year, and it was all online. That was great. I didn't have to leave my home. And, they did everything via a Zoom call, a secure Zoom call. But they were able to ask all the questions and do some core, part of their visit without me ever having to leave the comfort of my own house, which made it very nice, but it definitely changes how my doctor works, how their office staff works, and the things that they do. But it's not just there, right? It's when we go to the grocery store and we can do self-checkout, right? Self-checkout's a change. We now are interacting with that computer that is, scanning, and we scan our groceries. So more and more businesses will continue just to expand with that. But generally, we think about digital transformation, we think about some pretty exciting things. We think about robotics, but robots have been around for a long time. They've been used in manufacturing, but that's kind of a go-to. We think about VR, virtual reality. I have sons, and I've got a couple of them. That's what they're into, right? Everything's got to be VR, or drones delivering something. For one of my boys, he just can't wait till a pizza is being delivered by a drone to my house. And those are absolutely things that are transforming businesses using technology to make big changes, right? Someday, maybe UPS or Amazon, that's how they'll deliver packages, but I still get my packages by somebody in a gray or a brown van delivering what I need. And so really, when we talk about these big things, it's the things that are happening underneath and the kind of what I would call the day-to-day experiences that really do that, right? But digital transformation, as I mentioned, is in healthcare, right? We're using more software, we're using more devices. It's also an individual who might drive a semi-truck. I think back to my father-in-law, he drove a semi-truck, and he talked about having to keep logbooks. Everything he did was written down. But one of his brothers is still driving, and he puts everything into a computer now, or a tablet, to track everything that he does. And so it's all about taking technology and moving in even into places that we normally wouldn't have thought that there would be some need for digital transformation. But we can't get away from it, no matter what we do. But underlying that are digital skills. What are those skills, and really what does that mean? So I potentially could be somebody who does something and develops the next VR environment for education or for gaming. It still starts with basic digital skills. And we really, when we talk about digital skills, we break those down into 3 areas. Number 1 is that ability to use digital devices. 2, communication applications, not just email, right? It could be Zoom, it could be Snapchat, it could be FaceTime, right? Any of these ways that we can communicate. And then being able to use networks, not just generally we think about IT networks, right? But cloud-based services and leveraging the human network to use those. And when I have the chance to talk to students, most of them get digital devices, right? And if we think about it, probably the device that most people are savvy with is their phone, right? I mean, our phones have become more powerful than computers we used 10 or 15 years ago. We do a lot with those phones. And that's great. I always tell students, that's great. And usually what I ask is, are you tech savvy? And they'll do that. And I say, but if I take away your phone, how does that change things? And for some of them, it changes things a lot, because that's really how they communicate with the rest of the world, or even their friend who's sitting right next to them. But it's using more than that device. It's knowing what is the right device to use for the task that needs to happen. So, right, it could be a computer, it could be a Mac, it could be a PC, depending on what type of field that I'm interested in. It might be a specific computer or device that I need to use for HVAC or for automotive, or if I'm in healthcare, I might be using a different communication device or type of tablet to do the things that I need to do. But industry is very specific in the skills that they're asking for, and they kind of break these down in what seem like kind of high level. Number 1 is information and data literacy. And when we're talking about information and data literacy, we're not talking about being a network engineer. We're talking about individuals who know how to, 1, search for information and verify the information they found is correct. The internet is good news and bad news. You can find any answer you want, but more importantly is, once you find the answer that you think you want, how do you validate and verify that it's actually correct? It's also that ability to find information on your computer, how to store files, how to retrieve files, those basic things that are still lacking for a lot of individuals. Second is that communication and collaboration piece that we talked about earlier. Using the right device to communicate, to share files, because collaboration is key to almost any job. I think about my career, and it used to be that I would just do my thing in my silo, and that would be it. But I have the opportunity to work with Christina, and everything I do, we co-collaborate. And the reason is I need her input, and the ability to share a common file so that we can work on it makes it much easier for us to do that as we work and communicate on what might be the best thing to do. Number 3 is digital content creation. And we're not talking about somebody who, I want to be, social media or just marketing. It really permeates across all jobs where you have access to digital content. Depending on your job, you may, want to share a picture that you found on the internet as a way to convey something. You may not even be in marketing to do that, but do you own the rights to that image? What's the implications if you don't? And then how to not only do that, but how to kind of work within the software that you have, right? So how do I use Excel, and how do I edit the basic parameters of that software to accomplish what I need? Number 4 is the big one, problem solving. I say time and time again, I think the greatest thing in school, and when I look back on my education experience, I had many teachers that allowed me to fail, not in grades, unless that was warranted by my lack of effort, but school became this place of controlled failure, an opportunity for me to experience failure with somebody who knew more than I did, but then could help me figure out why I struggle. And anytime we introduce technology into anything, it's a risk of failure. So how do we help a student be job ready so that they can figure that out? If it's in PowerPoint and there's supposed to be animations and they're not working, how do you figure that out? If it's in Photoshop and you've got a problem with layering, what do you do? How do you either solve it on your own? How do you find the right resource to help you get that done? And the other part of problem solving is that awareness of your digital skills. Where are they today? And are they still meeting the needs of where you are and where you need to go? Because that's key. It's that, again, that lifelong learner. And the last one is really important. It's all about digital safety. Just this morning, I was reading about some people who are now trying to hack into state procurement systems. I got an email today from one of the states that we work with, and somebody has figured out a way to get in and start to hack at the procurement system, which exposes our company data and everybody else. But as an individual, what's my responsibility? How do I protect the device that I'm given? How do I make sure that I'm not opening up emails that look like they're legitimate, but they're not? In fact, I can tell you this week we had that happen here. One of our employees received an email from a customer and they were expecting the email. And he said, after he opened it, he thought that was a little strange. Thankfully, he caught it before what was there, which was malware that would have put a virus on his computer. He was able to catch it before he went too far. But again, it's recognizing that and how do you solve that? So those are the skills that industry is asking for when it comes to digital skills. But industry is saying, look, in addition to digital skills, there's some other skill sets that we want. And this information comes from International Data Corp. And I've watched these numbers over the last 5 or 6 years, and there's only been one change in it. And that's item number 4. It used to be that Microsoft Office was at 5, now it's moved to number 4. When we look at these, whether it's the oral and written communication, the problem solving, integrity, and detail oriented, a lot of times we approach those as soft skills, right? Do we have those skills? Can you do things with them? But when we look at it through the lens of digital skills, each one of these is tied together. If I'm supposed to draft an email, hopefully I've reviewed it enough time to make sure that the things are spelled correctly, that the message that I'm sending is appropriate and right, and I can communicate that so people don't receive it and go, wow, Daniel's really angry. And maybe I wasn't angry when I wrote it, but how I worded it kind of may convey some emotion to it that was unintentional. I talked about problem solving. How do I navigate my way through it? Integrity, you always hope that's being taught at home, but I think again in school we're really focused on integrity. The integrity to own the work that you've done as you're collaborating, that ability to give recognition to those people that you collaborate with. That's important. I know when I first started my career, one of the companies I worked with, you very much didn't tell anybody what anybody else did for you, and that was kind of the company motto. So no matter how much you did, as long as you did some of it, it was kind of expected you would take total ownership of it. And it was a really uncomfortable place to be because that was just the culture. But more and more people recognize that it's all about giving people the right credit for the things that they do and validating that through the work that's done. And last but not least is that ability to be detail oriented. That's crucial, right? If you're responsible to use Excel to manage the finances of a department, the numbers you put in should be right. The budget should be right. Having rounding errors causes a problem. I learned that early on when I worked fast food. The till always had to be right. But all of these connect to the use of Microsoft Office. So as we look at those skills, it's teaching those soft skills as we're teaching the use of technology. And industry says, look, not only do we want these skills, we place some importance on these skills. So number one, and this data came prior to March of this year, but we've gone and we've looked at more job postings in different areas, and we'd say the numbers are about the same. But prior to that, about 65% of all job postings listed some kind of digital skill expectations. And that could be must know how to use a computer, must know how to use software, and it might be by specific name. But that number continues, that 65% number will continue to grow over time because more and more jobs are requiring individuals to engage with technology. The other number that's interesting is that 90% of hiring managers would consider certification as part of their hiring criteria. The value of a certification is it's something that shows that an individual did more than. It's one more thing to have to help an individual stand up above maybe others that are applying for the same role. Or even if they're within an organization, it shows that they're willing to go above and beyond. And that's helpful when we're looking to potentially promote somebody as well. But over 78% of the jobs out there, those middle skill jobs, those entry level to kind of middle jobs, the requirement is spreadsheet and word processing skills. And I love when I have the opportunity to work on state issues and initiatives. I spend a lot of time looking at jobs that are in that area and what employers are posting. And some of them are very specific. It will say Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word and Excel or Photoshop. Or maybe as generic as must know spreadsheets and must know word processing skills. But those are the things that industry is looking for in most jobs. But if we're trying to really help students understand why, and most of them, depending on where they're going to school, they've picked these courses, they're generally not put into them, is there's some additional value to it. Number one, 36% of jobs, so the only requirement for some of them is productivity software, and that is Word and Excel. And the reason for that is everything else is going to be on the job training. If they have these baseline digital skills, everything else is going to be taught to them. You know, a company is going to train them specifically how they want them to use Excel. Or if you know how to use this spreadsheet, you're going to be able to, know how to pull data from a CRM. If you're trying to manage the customer database for a company, you're going to need to know how to pull reports out of that, and potentially how to put it in a pivot table so that it will make sense for yourself or whoever you're giving that to. But more importantly, it equals a 33% pay difference compared to others who might not have those same digital skills. So, if there's a student who's struggling to understand the why, sometimes we point them to the dollars. Who wouldn't want 33% more than another person who may or may not have those skills? So again, as companies look at it, they're now starting to treat Word and Excel as baseline skills, where it wasn't that long ago that these were nice to have. In specific roles, absolutely they needed them, but they're no longer a nicety. They're a requirement. So when we look at that, how does this all fit together, right? When we talk about, great, we know what industry wants, how does this fit for us, our students? And we look at that, we kind of think, what are those expected outcomes that we have for students, right? They're taking your courses. Number one, it's about helping them get real world skills. And I think that's kind of the key thing to help them start to see that these skills are usable. I always kind of say, look, I never understood in biology, when I took that in high school, I did tell the teacher that I really didn't care for the class because I didn't need to know the Latin name for a polar bear. It was a polar bear. Now, I'm sure there was value, but I can tell you that I did argue the fact in a math class, and I still remember sitting as an adult and given a problem, and I was like, I probably should have paid more attention in that math class. But it's all about connecting that why and those real world skills. And I think that's helpful. And sometimes you'll tell them, and like my experience, they won't recognize it till much later. The other thing that we generally have and is a desired expectation, for our students is some kind of industry recognition and skill validation. They've taken the class, they've taken this course of study, they're going to get a letter grade, a certificate of completion, right? But it's that third-party validation that really kind of cements everything that you've done and everything that the student's done as well. And it's helping them be better prepared for the future. So they walk out the door and they're ready to go. So where does ISAGrad fit in that? When we kind of look at this in two ways, right? We look at it as, if I go the right way, is we kind of look at this as kind of a nice round, right? In the middle is a student Could be an employee, it could be a job seeker, but our focus is to leverage assessments, education through a class or a course, another assessment to verify that learning took place, knowledge transfer happened, leaving them with a certification and on to recruitment. And that's probably, when you look at your students, depending on what you're trying to get them to, ultimately that's the goal, whether the recruitment is a job or the recruitment is they get into the college or the trade school that they want to get into. You've given them and helped them, or at least provided that opportunity for them to get those skills. And so, as I mentioned, for us, we start at the assessment level. And that's really key when we talk about figuring out what students know and what they can do. So with Tosa, it's all about using a unique formula to test knowledge. So we believe in delivering at the start of every class a pre or a formative class assessment. And we'll use Excel, but at the start of that class, I'm going to have every student, if I'm the teacher, we're going to take an assessment. The nice thing about that, it's only 20 to 25 questions, depending on the software that they're being tested on. And the questioning isn't a static bank of questions. It isn't a set project that they have to work through. It's an adaptive test. So as we're answering those questions, the test is adapting to where I am or where you are. So that for each student, they're having their own experience. They're actually being tested to confirm and verify a level of proficiency. And instead of weighting questions on a proposed level of difficulty, we use item response theory scoring, just like the GMAT test, so that when it's done, the student receives a score on a 5-level scale. So in that first assessment, we're going to know if you're a beginner, basic, productive, maybe they're advanced when they start your class, possibly expert, but we're going to know that very quickly. And we're going to actually provide you deeper insight into the skills that we measure. So within Excel, the entire Office suite, and the Adobe products, we measure in 4 different skill subcategories. So we're going to get deeper insights into that as well. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But more importantly, we're going to show what a student knows, what they've already mastered when they take that first assessment. Second, we're going to show what their gaps are, where they need to improve. And then we'll show them where they rank globally. I think we've had a few students that are competitive, so I like to see how they fare against everybody else. And then at the end of the course, we deliver a second assessment. It's not the same test. It's another adaptive test, and hopefully they've participated in everything that you've given them to learn. And once they've done that, that test will adapt to them, and we should definitely see an increase in their level of proficiency. And once they've done that, then they're ready to take the ISAGRAD Tosa certification. And the certification doesn't change dramatically. It's 10 more questions. Instead of a 40-minute time limit, they have an hour to complete that certification. The test experience is the same. It's the same adaptive questioning and item response theory scoring. So everything that we're going to ask them to perform is live in the application. So however a student remembers how to perform a task, they perform the task. We do multiple choice in both the assessment certification so that students have to understand what a correct if statement looks like when they see it, if they want to have an expected outcome for something to perform a certain way. So by using both multiple choice and live and application question, we really get a chance to see kind of the hands-on experience, and then we also get to see what they've retained in memory and can identify that way. And the certifications can be delivered multiple ways. Number one, they can be done using remote proctoring, which is great. Like I said, prior to the COVID situation, we've been doing it for 5 years. We have customers that are using it because for some of their students, the ability to travel back to campus isn't always easy. And it's not always convenient. So by having remote proctoring, that student can take a certification at their home or wherever they have internet access, in a Mac or a PC and or a Chromebook and a webcam and a microphone. They can take that certification exam and still be successful. Or they can come to campus and take a test and certification right in the classroom or in the testing center within the school itself. And every TOSA certification is valid for 3 years. Many years ago in the industry, we finally moved away from lifelong certifications, partly because technology was moving too quickly. And there was no way to guarantee what somebody knew today, they would know 5 years from now. And really within 3 years, a student's knowledge isn't going to stay the same. It will improve or it will decrease based on how they're using the things that you've taught them. And the other thing is that score can be verified online. So when they go to apply for a job and they talk about it and they show what their score is, it can also be verified online. So that's extremely helpful for a prospective employer to look at. And for us, since we work in industry, this is the kind of data that our corporate customers love to see. We don't show them that, but they recognize that they have access to that kind of data when people come to them and are already Tosa certified. And if they're not Tosa certified, we have customers who will buy the same assessment we would use in high schools, colleges, universities, that same test that we talked about earlier. They'll use that as part of the recruitment process to see what they do. But let's talk about what that looks like and what's our pathway, our prescription for success. And I'm going to pick Excel just because I love Excel. When we look at this, everything for us starts by reviewing the skills framework. What are the skills? Not what's the test, but what are the skills that somebody should know at each of the 5 levels of proficiency? And we review that, and these skill frameworks align to standards and testings and crosswalks, but they also allow you to use whatever curriculum you choose. We're a certification company and we're not a publisher, so we don't develop test prep curriculum. We do have some good partners who have built Tosa aligned courses, and really what they've done is they've taken their courses and said, we're going to kind of block them out so that depending on where an institution, a state, wherever wants to set some kind of expected outcome for an area of study, they know the skills that they have to teach. So in this example, if I'm teaching a class and we use Excel, and my expected outcome for my students is that when they certify, they fall within the productive range. So that's a score between 551 and 725. So I know that's where I want them to be. And so I deliver that very first assessment, and John takes that first assessment and he's a beginner, which is fine. What we learn, and what John will learn, is that he's got a baseline level of knowledge, but he sees all the areas that he's going to improve in. And it's not that my class will change. ISAGRAD's not saying upend everything, change all your lesson plans. But it allows you to say, all my students need to do these learning experiences and exercises to make sure that we get them to a proficiency level that's going to make them ready for what's next after this program of study or the class. And so John is a diligent student. He goes through and does his work. And at the end of the course, he takes his second assessment. Now that test is adapted. John has new skill gaps because now he's at a higher level. And his skill gaps are going to be potentially how, at a higher productivity level, or maybe at the advanced level. But he'll have demonstrated in that second assessment that he has moved from beginner, he's past basic, and he's got productive skills. And now if John chooses to, at that point, he can look and say, I still struggle in Excel with if statements. I just don't get the concept. And he can return back to the learning resources that he used in class. He can get with one of his peers in class. He can get with whoever the instructor is and say, I don't get it. But he can go and work on until he understands, one, what they are, how to write them, how to do it correctly, how to identify them, so that when he sits and takes the certification test, it's not about, is that answer A, B, C, or D? If he's given a live in the application question that says, write an if statement for this event to occur, he'll be able to write it and have confidence in what he's done. So then that allows him to have met the expected outcome that's there. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to turn the time over to Jacqueline for just a minute. I think she's got a few things to say as we're on this slide.
Yes, thanks. We have been in discussion with Daniel for a couple years. Actually, Daniel sent me an email a few years ago And I was very intrigued with their different philosophy of the score of 0 to 1,000. So we started this process, and since then we do have their certifications approved through the agency for Oklahoma. And because of the fact that it has that different base where everyone does earn a certificate, we will probably require the productive area for you to do follow-up. Now that does not mean that there's anything wrong with the lower level certifications. We're very happy for them to earn those. It's just for follow-up reporting, we're probably going to require productive. However, that has not been established totally at this point yet. We're still working on that, and I'm working with Daniel on that as we kind of crosswalk our competencies to their certification. So I just wanted to mention that briefly while we were on this slide so that you could kind of see where we were. And as he mentioned, I believe it's 551, did you say, to 725?
Yes, ma'am.
The scores. And while I am talking, there's a couple things that I do want to point out about this. Again, recognizing that office skills are critical, with it being the fourth top. I know a lot of administrators, especially in the high schools, are interested in trying to get away from Microsoft Office. And I think that's a huge disservice to our students. And so this is another set of statistics that you could provide, and we'll have this recorded for your administrators so that they can see the importance of Word and Excel. And not only just for work, but also for going on to college. I think it's absolutely critical, and we need to make sure that that message is getting out to those administrators. So I just wanted to say that, as Career Tech, as you all know, we encourage everyone to have the certifications. It's that verification of those skills for getting into the workforce. And so we're excited to have Tosa on board as one of our options for you. And of course, if you have any questions as far as our end of it, make sure you let one of the program specialists know. You can always get a hold of me. Daniel, did you have anything else you wanted me to cover?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, and I think, Jacqueline, you made an interesting point, right? It's all, when we think about those students that go to college, I'll give you an interesting example. So we worked with the University of Cincinnati and their Claremont campus. They've recognized for a period of time that students who go and want to attend and become an econ major, Excel is really the primary software that they use. But they recognize in their very first class, so Econ 101, that majority of their students didn't have the Excel skills for the class. And so we actually worked because they were afraid if they required them to take another class, their econ program would, disintegrate. So we worked with them to actually build Tosa into their existing econ class and work with a publisher partner where they could take a Tosa assessment at the start of the class, and there was an expected outcome. For you to be successful as an econ major, this is where you need to be by the end of 101 with Excel. And we actually did this in conjunction with these students right in their existing class. And it was interesting to see the change for those students. But it was, I think we were even surprised just as we looked at those first assessments and where some of the students had come from as far as schools, their overall level of knowledge for Excel was extremely low. And the school was happy because they said, wow, we've noticed a difference and our students have better engagement because they're confident with the tool that they have to use day in, day out. So now that we've talked about that and we've done that, let's take a minute and talk about what types of skills in those 4 domain areas that we measure within the skills framework for Excel. So number 1 is methods. We do functions, data manipulation, and formatting. And these bullet points are high level, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but we'll talk a little bit about functions, right? Straightforward, right? Handling formulas, using calculation functions and formulas, and identifying and inserting database calculation functions. So at a high level, those are the types of skills. But let's really go in and take a look at what does it look like. So we'll see if I can share my screen. And we'll go to the next one. So this is a report, and I have to be very careful. You'll see that it's my name on it. I took this test. I took it in October. And I'll zoom in. It's not a good one. You can see, and I don't know if everybody can see it, I am a beginner on that scale. On a 1 to 5 scale, I'm a beginner. And it even says my knowledge of this application is very basic and not adequate for the work environment. I will tell you, I did take that test trying to get things wrong, but I got a little bit of a hard time from the CEO when he saw that. But that's the kind of information that's helpful to know, right? I mean, if I was showing up for a job, this might mean something to a future employer to go, okay, it's like you're a passing acquaintance of Excel. You don't know much. But this report's going to show us how Daniel did on each of the questions that he answered. So anything in red I got wrong, anything in blue I got correct. And with every test that an individual takes, the first 5 questions are designed to give an estimate of where we think this individual will end up. And so we'll see that, my second question, I got a question right at a productive level, but to verify that, it went down to a lower level and I got that question right, said, okay, now we're going to take it up a notch. And we just see this horrible slide to disaster if this is me. But more importantly, it's the information that we provide in the 4 domain areas. So let's just go here, and these are the things I'm talking about. If I look at methods, and I'm a beginner, it says that in this domain it covers skills like configuring, printing, and saving options, protecting a workbook, those kind of things. And it shows that I have mastered a few editing skills, or at least tools, but more importantly, it's to go further. Where are Daniel's gaps? And one of them that would be scary if I was your student is that I don't know how to remove and add columns and rows and change their widths. Things that we might normally take for granted. You would hope that this is not my post-class assessment, right? But this is the type of data that we're going to provide. And I don't know how many students take a look at it. I just put myself back in a high school student. I probably never would have looked at it. But I think what it does is that if you're my teacher, unfortunately, and I keep saying I don't get it, we start with the data. We also allow you as the teacher to go in and be able to see the answers, the questions and the answers. And it's not about memorizing them, but to help a student work a problem. That's really helpful when we're trying to connect those dots so the student can go, oh, now I get it. My best example of this is I did a certification session with a couple educators. They were new clients, and when we were able to do on-site visits, I tell every one of our customers, we'll always do certifications for free for the educators. And I said, well, I'm there, we'll do your certifications. And one of the teachers said, there's question number such and such is wrong in your test. And I said, I don't know that. I don't write the test questions. And she said, I'm pretty sure it's wrong. And I said, well, I can log in as an admin. I have access to the question bank. And I said, okay, tell me the questions. We found it. And I said, well, your answer is marked wrong, but the answer should be something different. And I said, and it wasn't a live in the application. It was a multiple choice based on a scenario. So I said, the only way for us to figure this out is to work the problem. And she was gracious enough. We plugged into the InFocus projector and we worked the problem on the big screen. Now, I told her that I thought our answer was wrong too, and I thought it was a different answer. And when it was all said and done, we were both wrong. But it was an interesting experience, I think, for both of us. Not about, hey, we were both wrong. We worked the problem. And really, she kind of said, wow, this is a great thing to do with my students. If I notice that there's a lack of understanding with certain skills, we work that problem. We really help enforce it. And both of us walked out going, well, we learned something new today. So it is about driving a lot of data for you. The other thing is, once I've taken my first assessment, that pre-class assessment, and I take my post-assessment, we can run a report that will show a compare and contrast against the first and the current assessment. And I wish I could show you, but I can't because I don't have permission. I met with one of our customers who's in Michigan on Friday, and we went through her student data because they just were getting ready to start certifications for summer school. And as we went through the data for her students, we looked at each report independently, the pre and the post, and then we did the compare and contrast. And it was interesting. She had a student who that stayed productive, like they were basic at the beginning in most areas, but they had got higher in some areas. So their overall proficiency on their first assessment was actually productive. Their second assessment was productive as well. And at first she was concerned. Well, they haven't changed. And what we did is we went in and first we looked at the numeric score on their certification, and it was higher at the high end of productive. But then we went and did a compare and contrast. And what we found out in methods and functions specifically, the student had a 25% increase in their level of proficiency from their first assessment to that. In one of the areas, it was a 5%, and the other, it was flat. And the two that were lower were areas she said, we really didn't even get into that. But she said formula or methods and functions were the things that I was very, very focused on. And so even to be able to recognize a 25% improvement was helpful for her and helpful as she worked with those students as well. So again, I can't stress the data enough, right? It's that ability to really get full insight into what students know and what they can do, and making sure that as you're aligning to the standards that the state has, that you have clear vision of how your students are progressing and how your class or the programs that you're responsible for, how they're progressing as well. So the benefits of adopting, help if I show the right screen. Hang on. Okay, the benefits of adopting Tosa are this. Number one, we've really designed it to be easy to implement. And by that, I mean, we had a school at the end of the 1920 school year. They were really in a pickle when it related to their summer school. They had to do summer school. They weren't sure if they were going to do it. So it was back and forth. And I got a phone call from the principal, and he said, we have to do it. And we have to start in 2 weeks. And I said, well, it's not a problem for us. You've reviewed the domain frameworks. We kind of have an idea what to do. And what we had to do was we had to train their proctors, kind of do the teacher PD and how to use the platform. And we did that within 4 days and had them ready to go so that their teachers were confident in doing the things that they needed to do. So it's all about that ease of implementation, providing you the student gains and losses after spring. I mean, for a lot of our customers, they're concerned if they were taking software related courses, what are they going to get from the summer? I mean, it's not like most of them are home working on Photoshop or Excel or Word. What does that gap look like? And it's providing you those multiple methods of assessment so that you can really confirm and verify what it is that you know. I think most teachers always say, when we do the first assessment, we have a pretty good idea where students are. But that data kind of helps them because class to class, that may change. Student to student, we know that that's different. But it allows you to look at that data and say, with this class, I can see a consistent lack of knowledge in this specific area of the software we're going to use. So then we can turn around and make sure that we emphasize that as we're going through our lesson plans and doing the things that we need to. You've got that ability to, do assessments and certification for your remote learners. So if we're not coming back to campus for this first semester, they still can move forward and achieve the outcomes that you have in place for them without putting a huge burden on yourself. Next is, it's that alignment. As we have that opportunity to work with Jacqueline and everybody else. It's the building out that alignment where there's confidence in what you're doing and aligning to the expected outcome that will be set so that, again, we know where we're focused. And it's all about providing the student data from beginning to end, all data that we need to use and report to the state. So with that, I'd like to open it up and see if there's any questions.
One thing that I wanted to add was, and I forgot to mention, is that the program specialists in our division have been working on updating the testing guides, and Tosa will be listed on the testing guides as well as in the syllabi. So that's been added this year. Those will hopefully be out on CTU for Summit. I know we're busy. I know I'm busy working on it. I don't know if Kathy's quite done or not, but we're trying to get those out there for you for next week. And so I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Super. Well, the other thing that we'd like to do, I mean, I think it's helpful if you have an interest in being able to try a TOSA assessment out for yourself, or, you know, all you need to do is contact us. We're happy to provide you access so that you can have that. It's, you know, I think it's always important. As I mentioned, with adoption, we allow the teachers to get their certifications at no cost. That's extremely important so that they're certified, they've had that same experience that their students had as well. And knowing that we've got a whole team that will support you. And in that first year, you'll actually have, we assign someone to each school, and they manage a few schools, but that customer success person is designed to make sure that as you go through that first year, you have all the support you need from our team to, you know, do everything that you need to, how to review the data, how to get the data you need to wherever it needs to go as well. So we try to make that very straightforward for people as well. And so we'd be happy to provide you access to any assessments that you or somebody within your school or tech center would like to review.
And I will go ahead and throw my email address out there in the chat. So if you guys, like Daniel said, if you want to try an assessment, just email me. I can throw yours up there as well. Either one of us can set that up for you.
Yep. So if there's no other questions and I don't see anything in the chat, I think that we have concluded our session for today.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Daniel and Christina. We appreciate you guys taking time out to present, and I appreciate all the instructors who took time to see the presentation. If you do have any questions, make sure you reach out to us. If you don't have their contact information, we can make sure that you get that. And does anybody have any last minute questions? Kathy, do you have any questions or?
No, if anyone wants the email address, Christina's put it in the chat box. You can save your chat box by clicking on those 3 dots in the lower right-hand corner.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and present today. And I really appreciate people near the end of your day to spend an hour with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.